Hello, everybody. We've typical Elon time and being slightly delayed, but hopefully everyone's joining us now. And yeah, we're having comments coming through on YouTube, so that's a good one. And we'll also be on Facebook as well. So welcome everybody to our next event, which is with a company called JPS Renewable Energy. They are one of our key partners for Tesla Owners UK. And tonight's just going to be a bit of a relaxed chat and talk with the team behind the company to find out sort of a bit more about them, a bit more about the industry. It's not really designed to be a sales talk, although obviously I'm sure JPS would love everyone to buy solar and Powells, etc. through them. But it's more about just an interesting sort of learning evening about the industry. But we'll start very soon. If you have any questions throughout, then please fire away into the chat, and we'll have some times where we can answer those as soon as we get to those points. They cover London and South East primarily, but we'll cover the majority of the UK as well. So if you're local, then great. But if you're further afield, then don't feel like you're stuck out there. So without further ado, I will pass you over to JPS Renewable Energy. Tonight we have Rob, the sales director, Richard, the MD, Bobby, the construction director, and Luke, the technical director. So, hey guys, how are you?
Evening, Will. Yeah, we're good, thank you. I'm Richard. This is Rob.
Hello.
Bobby's just about to walk on. This is Bobby, the construction director, who looks after all our groundwork. We're doing some nice groundwork car chargers for you guys. And hiding around the back is just about to come on. There's Luke, just sneaked into the corner. He's our technical director. He looks after all the field and looks after all the incidents. Cheers, guys.
Great stuff.
So,
well, thank you. Yeah, over to you then.
Thank you very much, Will. So, I'm going to try not to keep this too boring. Myself and Rob can talk about this stuff indefinitely, really, can't we?
Yes.
We could go on all night. We have Will's very kind to give us an hour and a half of your time, so we're going to try and keep it short. A little bit about my history. I'm an electrician by trade. I joined the solar industry in 2010 when I had solar panels installed on my house doing the electrics, good old-fashioned string system. Moved through a couple of different installers, went into wholesale for a little while before joining JPS in 2014 and then taking the company over in 2016. For any other installers that happen to be watching, we've all ridden the solar coaster up and down where the government have interfered with the. So at the beginning of last year, once the tariffs were cut, Rob approached me and said, Rich, we're in a great position now. The government can't interfere with us anymore. Let's do something in solar. Rob's got a very good standing within the industry. He'll tell you a little bit about himself in here. And we set about building JPS up. Now the fact that the government interference had gone. So last little point about me, if there is any solar professionals in the building, my claim to fame is at the Seagen event, which is the biggest wholesaler in the UK, when they went to Alton Towers to hold their annual conference. I did the impromptu DJ set on the night in the main hall. So if anyone witnessed that, very sorry. Rob, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I don't have any claims to fame. I was pretty boring by comparison. Yeah, okay. Thanks for putting me on the spot there, Richard, because I didn't realise I was going to speak about me, but I've worked in the industry for 10 years and started out the realm of free solar. Back in the day, it was possible to have modules installed on your roof free of charge, and the installing backer would enjoy the feed-in tariffs, so you only got the saving. But that's where I cut my teeth back in 2010, and then I went on to worked for a couple of very prestigious UK-wide installers, and then spent 5 years with a module manufacturer working out of Europe, running their UK desk. And that was fantastic because it gave me a lot of insight into exactly what goes on behind the scenes in panel manufacturers. We were working with batteries, we were working with inverter manufacturers, and I got to see all of the sort of cloak and dagger goings on, you know, really inside the industry, and I've brought that with me now to JPS, so that we can help guide our customers to make very smart choices around the way that they pick their system and how they have it integrated into their home, and so that they can purchase with higher degree of confidence. So yeah, I was going to then speak a little bit about the state of solar in the UK, to give those of you a background that maybe don't know so much about it, for whom it might be a little bit new. There have been over 1 million solar installations in the UK. In fact, we have a slide, Luke, slide 1. This is not a very interesting graph particularly, but it is the UK cumulative installation graph, showing everything from 2010, when it all really started in earnest. Is it working there? Yeah, there we go. And I mean, outside of the context, it's hard to see what that really means, but that axis up the right hand side there is very nearly gigawatts of peak. To put that into maybe slightly more understandable, that's over 40 million PV panels that have been deployed in the UK. So it's very mainstream stuff. It's been well tried and tested. Over that deployment of 40 million panels, then it's been possible to see where the manufacturers, particular styles of module that may or may not be as reliable or more reliable. A lot of learning has been done.
Carry on, Rob. Take 2.
Okay, right. Solar panels and where they've got to. Yes, right. I've got to pick the thread back up here now. I was probably about to say how JPS have trialled and worked with a lot of equipment over the 10 years that we've been trading. So we've seen what kind of modules work, which manufacturers one may or may not want to avoid, these sorts of things. We've gleaned that industry knowledge over time, and obviously we take that and help then guide our customers to make wise choices. I could probably say a lot more about any of this stuff, and I probably will as the presentation goes on, but for brevity, let's leave it at that for the time being. The other thing around panels and PV in general is that it isn't necessarily just about the savings or the financials. So while the financial side and the savings that one can enjoy are very, very good, and our customers are universally impressed with the cost reductions they get on their bills from PV, it's also about creating a fine enhancement for the home. So I have thought this for a long time, and it's proving evidential that to bring your property into the 21st century, PV is something that is going to be included in it, or in one way or the other. The preponderance of electric vehicles, the never-ending march towards more electrical consumption, and just the fact that it is the smart, sort of modern choice of thing to do, means that, you know, we're all going to, if you're not thinking it now, you're going to be thinking when it's time to start sell, buy properties, to move around. It's like, where are the renewables in this scheme, and how has that been done to complement the nature of the property I'm buying? Because done nicely, these can be genuine enhancements to the home. In fact, they are really, that's how they should be viewed. A nice set of PV panels, you know, Powerful battery storage. It's really sort of the gold-plated option as far as getting yourself, sort of giving yourself more energy autonomy and building a property that is forward-thinking. Through that, on further to that point, we specialise here at JPS in being able to deliver systems onto a whole range of properties. So it doesn't matter if you've got a pitched roof, you've got flat roof space, if you've got some ground space where you want to put equipment, we have solutions that will work for all of that. And as we move on through the presentation, we'll show you some images. And the guys that install it for you, they are handpicked as well. So while many PV contractors will advertise that they come and do your job for you anywhere that you want, or in the UK or what have you, they will then pick a local subcontractor that they may know well or may not know well. It is always JPS guys that will turn up to do your job for you, and they would have been trained in-house to our methods under the tutelage of Richard, for example, and Luke, our technical director, who is absolutely like gold star, A1 installer, aren't you, Luke? Yes, very good. Yeah, okay, excellent. He agrees. So yeah, I'm sorry I got cut off, and I think I probably said a lot more after I was cut off than I have just then. But I think that kind of captures the summary of it. And then the next thing that I should speak to you about before we take maybe some first questions is panels themselves. So this is always the first talking point amongst customers because it's the most obvious bit. It's the bit that you see on the roof. And there are a range of manufacturers, obviously. There's a range of manufacturing styles or principles that can go into this equipment. But we have, as I said, sort of tried to tease through it to find the products that are best on the whole for customers. And we look at these solutions from the point of view of what would we be wanting if we were a customer. So I take into consideration the efficiency of the module. I take into consideration its styling. I take into consideration its power output and also its cost. We look at things from every angle so that we can pick a product that's exactly right for you. Now, you may notice on our website, if you visited that, it's down here, info at JPS Renewable Energy. We reference on the website, for example, JA modules and LG modules, and these are extremely mainstream, well tried and tested products. So JA, for example, is the world's second largest manufacturer of PV modules. It's been around for over 10 years. I know that doesn't sound like very long in the grand scheme of companies, but in the PV world, they're a veteran, and their equipment has been out there in the field operating very nicely for sustained periods of time and has shown to deliver over those periods of time. LG also actually a bit of a newer comer into the sector compared, but still make very, very good equipment, very reliable, and they do a few things around the module that make it even squeeze out a little bit more power. Although having said that, in recent months, the mid-tiers, the large-scale sort of upper-end Chinese manufacturers such as JA, Longi and what have you, have caught up a lot in efficiency too. So it's an ever-changing sort of market and landscape for equipment, and that's why we have to always stay at the very top of it and keep seeing what's coming out, how things are changing, because from month to month, and I find it happens in my day-to-day work, that what we told you 6 months ago may have changed a little bit in the interim. And folks often come back to us and say, oh, Rob, house is built now, ready to put the panels on. Does that quote that you gave us still count? And I can often find myself saying to them, well, what was a 320 watt module 6 months ago when you came to us is now a 345 watt module. So, we'll just upgrade you to the latest equipment, and often at zero cost, because these are the general market trends. I've got a couple of examples here. You showed them off, didn't you, Richard?
Yeah, indeed. There's the LG.
Yeah, okay. So this here is this is tiny, right? But that's like a baby brother to the whole thing. But everything you see on this is accurate. So that's the junction box at the back. There's the positive and negative cables that go into the inverters. That's the cells. If you look closely, you can see that there are little silver pickups there on the front of the cells. When the light hits this, the photovoltaic effect creates the electrons, obviously creates the potential. These little bars pick that up and carry it out of the module via those lines and send it off to a place where your house can use it. That actually, front mounted silvering bus bars on there is pretty much a traditional style of PV cell. That's something you might see in the JA module or in the Longi module. That's quite typical. If I find you an LG one quickly, my beautiful assistant is there on hand with it. You'll notice, if you can, that if I clean this a little, the cell there is actually blank on the front. Okay, that's just a homogeneous coloration there. The reason being is that all of their pickup is back contact. So that's silver in there that you can see. It's very detailed, and it might not even come up on the camera, but there are loads and loads of little silver lines in there, and that is silver as well, used for its conductivity. That alone, that will get you 5% more power just because there's no silver on the front of the cell, allowing more light to hit it. So, as Richard said at the start, we can talk about this stuff for hours and I won't bore you, but there's a little example of what goes on inside modules that most people don't sort of even realise.
So,
yeah, Richard, back to you because there's another
yes, but
layer.
There is. So, there's some questions popping up on the group chat. If we bring Will back in, if that's okay, Will's going to ask the questions.
Hey guys, I don't know if I'm coming on the screen or not, but we've got one question here. What is the recommended process to start the solar journey? They've read sort of loads of pages, loads of information online, but seem to have really got lost in all of that and don't really know where to go. What are the steps to get there?
Do you want to answer that, Richard?
Yeah, I'll start and then you can jump in halfway through. So, firstly, examine your usage, because before you want to spend your hard-earned money, you generally want to look at what you're doing in your house first. Can you make some changes that will save you time, whether that be a different tariff, whether that be shifting your usage? When you start to examine what you're using, you'll have a better understanding when someone comes and sits down and says, okay, let's talk about system size. A typical system in the UK will generate 1,000 kilowatt hours for every kilowatt of PV installed. And that's where we're lucky enough to have the sun in the south. It slowly drifts off to about 700 kilowatt hours per kilowatt installed as we head further north up into Scotland. So by identifying your usage, when you have a solar professional come into your house and they say, how much are you using? You say 4,000 kilowatt hours per year. You know you're going to be looking at something around 4,000 or 5,000 kilowatts in a system, because that's, you want to try and cover your usage with, and we're going to come on to it a little bit later, the octopus tariffs, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about them later. Anything to add, Rob?
Yes.
What you might.
So the question was, what's the first thing to do on your solar journey?
Yeah.
Right. I would say you call us up. I would take a look at your property online, and I could very quickly, as Richard I just described in a short conversation with you over the phone, I could get to the crux of probably how much power you're using in the property, and also the potential for your property as far as solar is concerned. And then from the back of that, we could very quickly ascertain exactly where you sit in the grand scheme of what's possible with your with solar, yeah, your suitability, and and how it would help you. And really, when you speak to the way we do it on the phone, for example, we can get to that, quite quickly for you, and reveal it all.
Mm.
Yeah, this is good. Should we take another question?
Yeah, so let's get a couple more to go.
So the next question is, what are the differences between the different solar modules?
Well, shall I start with that one?
You go with that one. Me and Bobby are going to get a prop.
Right, okay. There's a bunch of differences. So I won't talk about manufacturers so much, I've already done that. But at the very least, we are seeing now different sizes. So modules can be different sizes, length and width. As manufacturers push for more power output, they are making the modules a little bit bigger. This is creeping into the market. So it used to be that they were like 1.65 by a metre. You're losing me! And now they're getting a bit larger. What module is this, for example?
JA285.
Right, a JA285. Okay, so this is actually quite a traditional size. So yeah, that's one thing. They're getting a little bit bigger because they're trying to push more power, because it's exciting for customers, obviously, to be given a module that says 380 watts of power instead of 320. But it's a bit of a trick because they're just making the panel bigger. Now, you've also got mono and poly cells. So again, without going into too much detail, when you cast the cell from its silicon at the very beginning of the process, when the cells inside are made, they can either be made in an ingot fashion, or they can be made in this amorphous sort of glued together crystal fashion. This is actually a poly. That's the glued together crystal fashion. And these are a little bit more old-fashioned, so they're kind of bluer in colour, and they come with this square pattern, and they're slightly less efficient than the mono. The monocrystalline is more up to date, and this is an example of a mono. I'm pretty sure, or is it? What one's that?
Yeah, it's JMI.
Okay, yeah. So they've even made these square now. These used to. You guys are really struggling. They used to have like little cut corners on them. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, but yeah. But that's another. Now this is because of all the crystals line up inside the cell. It means when nice direct sunlight hits them, you get a slightly higher level of efficiency out of them. So you tend to be able to squeeze a bit more power out of a mono cell. And in the last 3 years, pretty much all manufacturing has lent very heavily towards this. It's typical of the economies of scale. The slightly more efficient stuff is, preferred by manufacturers and therefore ends up coming to the fore. Okay. So LG, JA, everyone that we've spoken about, they're all using mono. And sometimes they can be on white back sheets and sometimes they can be on black. So the examples you're seeing here are on white back sheets. That's why you're seeing this little bit of white line here. This is the back sheet showing through. This gives you a little bit more power because the white back sheet bounces more photons into the cell. If you opt for a black, you get a sleeker looking visual, but you always give up a little bit of efficiency because you don't get quite as many photons going in there. So yeah, size, cell type, manufacturer, that's pretty much it. I hope that's enough information for that question, Will.
I think it certainly was, yeah. That seemed to
okay.
We did warn you. We did warn you we could be boring.
No, it's very, I mean, for me personally, it's very interesting to learn about all those different things. For me, you look at a solar panel and that's about it. You don't really know the rest of it. So yeah, cool.
Any more questions?
Yeah, we've got a few. I didn't know if you wanted to crack on and we can answer. Some of them are related to octopus, that sort of thing for later.
We'll do those at the end if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So no, crack on.
Okay, right. So Rob's talked about the panels. The panels are only good as the inversion technology you choose to convert the DC that the solar panels make to AC, which is what you run everything on your house on and what the grid runs on. Now, I've been installing since 2010, 2011. We're starting to see now some of the traditional inverters failing. So, a lot of the earlier systems, you have one of these in your loft, a big string inverter. This is quite a modern one, Solis, 4 kilowatts in power, and you'll see the big heat sink on the back. If this is 90% efficiency and you're running at 3.6 kilowatts, you're going to have about 300, 400 watts of heat being dispersed via that heat sink. So you lose quite a bit of power, and where that's located needs to be quite cool. And to be honest, as much as they advance that technology on, it's old hat. It's old. What we prefer to use and what the industry is moving towards is what's known as module level electronics, whether that be with a solar edge optimizer located under the panel or a microinverter. Now, for anyone that's been around quite a while, you remember Nexus, the university company based out of Cambridge. Absolutely fantastic product. Unfortunately, they forgot to test it enough. So we've chosen and predominantly use M-phase microinverters. We've installed these for the police, the fire service, the NHS, and the reason the public sector choose them and the reason we choose them is that they're safe. There's almost zero fire risk with these because there's no arc fault potential. What do I mean by arc fault? When you have DC or AC power, anything above about 105 volts has the potential to cause an arc fault, whether it be a dry joint, wet joint, or as we call it electrically, a high resistant joint. By inverting every single panel up to each panel runs between 40 and 50 volts, you don't get to that arc fault voltage. So that it's impossible for the arc fault to develop. It's the arc fault. Unfortunately, within the industry, we've seen some quite high profile fires. Brighton Civic Centre, I think, being one of them. That was actually caused by Faulty junction box, something the installer wouldn't know anything about. You would install it, you test it, you wouldn't know it was faulty. So by using M-phase microinverters, not only have you got the safety aspect, but each module can work to its own efficiency. So when they come off the production line and they get flash tested, and if they're lucky enough they get flash tested once and pass, or Rob might tell you, some will go through a few times until they get the numbers they need. Once it's flash tested and gets sorted, they get sorted into batches, and those batches will have plus or minus 3% tolerance. Some manufacturers work to 5%. In the early days of PV, we was working to plus or minus 10%. Now, if you think over the life of the system, if one panel is working 10% lower than the one next to it, in a traditional string system, you work to the lowest power output of a panel. So just like when you've had to change the batteries in the torch, you can only find 2 brand new ones. You pop 2 brand new ones in, you put one old duff one in, and you get a really poor beam because they're in string, they're in together, they're in series, and you don't get the full strength of the 2 batteries. Exactly the same for the traditional PV systems. With modular level electronics, each panel can work to its own efficiency, which means the actual engine, the bit doing the really hard work, has the ability to convert everything that panel has. Now, these things are good in unshaded conditions, but when you also introduce some shading, they really come into their own. But not only shading, different orientations. So it might be you could do an east-west roof, you could do a an east, a west, and a south, and just by putting one of these underneath, you can convert all of the electricity. We chose M-phase over Solar Edge because they did a lot more testing. M-phase do 1 million hours of testing before they release the product. Sometimes we're a little slow to market because of that testing. They're just bringing out the latest higher powered inverter now, which is due to be released sometime this month. But to work with new higher power modules Rob was talking about earlier. Solar Edge isn't a bad product. It's good, it works, you get that efficiency, you get that module level information, you get the module level efficiency. But by introducing that string inverter, that big box you've got to locate somewhere, not only are you introducing high voltage DC, now in Solar Edge that is protected, but potentially you still will have 600 volts floating around in your loft, but you're also, more importantly, introducing a single point of failure. Now, we're approved Solar Edge installers. We get called out to deal with the inverters when they fail, and at best, we can normally turn an inverter around in about 3 weeks. So you phone up, your system's not working, you're not happy, we get a guy to come out, we diagnose it with Solar Edge. We might be able to fix it with a software update, but if it's got to be replaced, it's back to the office, we wait for the Solar Edge to deliver it, we get it delivered, we book it in at a convenient time, and then we come and swap it. It's about 3 weeks. 3 weeks in the middle of the summer, unhappy customers. N-phase microinverters got 99.8% uptime across their 25-year life. So it's a phenomenal availability of power. And if one does fail, and they do fail, and I'll tell you the figure in a minute, if they do fail, you're not phoning me up saying, the system's not generating, it's not working. You're going to phone me up and say, I think one of the panels is broken. I log in, I have a look from the comfort of my desk, I'll get M-phase to do some remote diagnostics, whether that be a software update, a reboot, reflash the ROM. If we can't get it going, we book in a time that's convenient for you to come and replace it. Because it's not a rush. We can make it part of planned maintenance because it's only one panel. 1 out of 16, 1 out of 250 on a commercial system. So I've been installing these since about 2014. Genuinely, I've lost count how many I've installed, but I can tell you how many I've replaced, and that's 3. 3 out of the thousands. The failure rate is something like 0.01% for all the units we've installed. And the ones that have failed in what's called their infancy. So they've been installed 1 or 2 months, there's a component failure, there's a problem with the board, and they fail. So quite quickly, it's within not only our warranty, but the 25-year warranty that M-phase offer as well. We come out, we change it, and luckily for me, M-phase paid me for changing it. So no one's out of pocket. That was a whistle-stop tour
No, you've forgotten something.
Have I?
Monitoring.
Monitoring.
Have we got those slides working yet, or are we not risky yet?
Another go, mate.
Right, so with the end phase and the Solar Edge portals, we hopefully, fingers crossed, not yet, we're going to try and, yes, we're in. So with the Solar Edge and the end phase, we're showing you the end phase monitoring now. It's just about to appear. We've got the gallery up.
You've got gallery.
We've got gallery, so if you can just change it. With the end phase monitoring, not only do you get your panel level information, so how well each panel's performing, you also get to see your imported information and your exported information. Now that's really quite important. No, we're still on the gallery view. So with that imported and exported information, there we're going to try again. What that does enables you, the consumer, the customer, to have an informed opinion about what you need to do with your system next. A lot of people, solar's a big investment, they can't afford to do it in one go, so they might do a small system. They might fill the roof up but not do the batteries. So rather than have, hey, there we go.
Oh,
So rather than have a solar professional, not us, but another solar professional come out and go, you need X kilowatt hours of batteries. The system you can see on the screen gives you the information to come to us and say, actually, I know I need an X kilowatt battery. And it's all quite clear. So if we look at the screen on the left-hand side, we can see the figures. The top figure is the amount of imported power, the amount of produced power that this particular system has generated this day. And I don't know if you can see it, but just underneath it, it tells you how much power has been exported to grid. And it looks like it's about 5 kilowatts. Is that about right?
Yeah, 4.98.
4.98 kilowatts. The information below is to consume. That's showing you that in your house, whether you've imported it from the grid or used your own solar generation, you've actually consumed 27 kilowatt hours. So you'd sit there and think, right, okay, that makes 32 minus 27, that gives me 5. So I must have exported 5. Well, you have, but you may have also imported power. On this system you haven't, but if you look directly below, you can see there you've got 0.1 kilowatt hours of power imported from the grid. If you look to the graph below, you can see there's no usage. So the orange, the light orange, which is predominant across the bottom half of that graph, is the consumption within the house. Now the small tiny little dot of orange that's darker, that is the actual imported power from the grid. That's the amount of power that this customer has pulled from the grid on this particular day. Now the reason he's doing this is because he's got to test the Powerwall. Now if we look on the positive side of the graph, you can see light blue and you can see dark blue. The light blue is the power that's been generated by the panels that has been used in the house. Now, because the end-phase system doesn't know about the Powerwall, the light blue is also where we've charged the batteries. So the customers charge the batteries, and then the dark blue at the end of the day is where the batteries are full and the power's going back to the grid. So at either end of the day, during the night, which is the first part of the graph, which is completely no usage, and on the right-hand side, where there's no usage in the evening, that's where the customer's running on the battery. Now, if we flip back a year, pre-Powerwall, you can see quite clearly the dark orange during the nighttime period, and this is where it does get a little bit big brother. You can see what time they get up, you can see what time he's made his cup of tea in the morning, and then you can see the panels start to generate. And if you see the difference now, the light blue is used power that's been generated, the dark blue is export. So you can see there's a big difference. And you can see when the family return home and start to cook their dinner, looks like it was an oven meal that night, or probably pizza, because the oven has been on for about 40 minutes or so. You can see where they're drawing power, but you can also see where the power has mostly been exported back to the grid. So if we refer back up to the top figures, similar generation, 26.39 kilowatt hours. Similar consumption, 21.71. So when I look down and I look at the figure below the produced, it actually says they've exported 17 kilowatt hours. When I look below the consumed figure, it says 13.11 kilowatt hours. So they've actually imported 13 kilowatts, but exported 17. So you can see the mismatch. It's all about time of use. And for anyone that's on the Agile tariff and Octopus tariff, which we're going to talk about later again, that's the reason why. It's all about time of use. They've got plenty of power generation. They've got enough to cover their load, but they're not doing the washing, the cooking the pizza. They're not doing it at the right times of the day. Do we have any more, Luke? Or is that the two we've got? I think that was the two, wasn't it?
Those are the two online.
Okay.
I think we have another little question.
I think we do.
So, what is the price difference between those typical sort of old school inverters, as I would want to say, and the new sort of micro module ones? Is there a price difference? Does it, over time, does that work itself out?
Yeah, so your string inverter typically comes with a 5-year warranty. Plot that there. They range anything from 500 up to £1,000, whether you're buying Chinese or whether you're buying German. Micro inverters, on the other hand, to buy around 110, 120 pounds each. So if you've got 7, 8, 10 panels, you're looking at probably about £600 for a string inverter, but you'll be looking over £1,000 for the micro inverters. When you look at that in terms of production, the systems we've installed using the MCS standard irradiance calculator, and I don't mean to bore you, but the amount of sun falling on a given square metre. String inverters typically perform to the MCS standard. Micro inverters in unshaded conditions can surpass that 10–12%. So those low light conditions. And if anyone is really interested, I could go in to tell you all about the burst fire technology, the capacitors that give you low light, early morning, extra production and things like that. But I think you've got probably better things to do with your evening.
There is one guiding principle as well to all of this that's quite important to mention, is because with these systems, they are designed, well, one would hope that they last decades. And when you're doing this for your own property, it's not always necessarily about, getting the cheapest thing, because it's, you can rely on this equipment for a long, long time to come. And the fact that it costs a little bit more at the start, you will absolutely not regret that, because the peace of mind and the understanding it gives you about your system and how it's working is absolutely worth every penny. So this is why we recommend them. It's not just because we want people to buy more expensive kit, it's because it really does have true value in it. If you're only putting 10 modules, 16 modules, 20 modules on your home, the price difference between the two options really is small enough to be an irrelevance.
Yeah, and obviously with the string inverters, we've seen some that have failed after 2 or 3 years. We've seen some that have done 8. We've got ones that in field that are still going strong, doing 10. But that doesn't make a difference whether they're Chinese or German. It really does depend whether you get a good inverter with good components or whether you get a Friday afternoon model. It generally is that hit and miss with them. The other thing is, if your string system isn't working and the monitoring that comes with string system is basically a graph showing you output, you can they've now started doing import and export as well. But if your string system you think is underperforming, the only way to do it is to start doing thermal scans to pick up panels that have got failed diodes that are running high resistance to the others. With Enphase, from the comfort of my desk and from your desk or your app on your phone, you can look at the app and you can go, hang on a minute, something's not right there. That's producing half of what the other ones are doing. And it's quite clear to see, rather than the expensive fault diagnosis you have to go through with string systems. So, yeah.
And just to clarify, each panel then has effectively an inverter built in, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, got you. Okay. Yeah, just someone was a bit confused. And what else does that plug into then? So each one's got an inverter on. What does that go to?
So you get the DC that plugs into one side of the inverter, the AC comes out. There's no wiring as such to do on the roof. The cable is all preformed. So it comes in either 1 metre lengths or 1.7 or 2 metre lengths, depending whether the panels are in portrait or whether they're in landscape or whether they're the 2 metre panels. So there's a preformed cable that only requires a ceiling cap or a branch terminator to put on the end, and then a connection that normally goes under the panels or potentially inside the loft space, depending on the type of installation, where we connect that to an isolator or an electrical junction box. And that's it. There's no other connections to be done. Whereas
it's one cable that goes around the back and connects them all together.
Yeah. Because that was my next question: whether they connect to each other or do they connect to one cable going round?
Yeah.
If you can imagine, there's one cable like that. It's called an engage cable, and then each panel plugs in down its length at the top end like this, plugs in parallel. And then that one cable, which is carrying 240 volts of AC, exactly like a ring main, exactly like your plug sockets at home, that cable then makes its way back to the consumer unit, the trip switches in the home. So it's very painless from that perspective. You don't have to be running cable in a convoluted fashion around people's properties. Oftentimes it comes externally down in a capping and then enters into the property from outside. One penetration point through a brickwork or something like that. Very straightforward, really. Yeah.
Cool. So we've got another one. Is additional insurance needed? Do you have to tell your buildings insurance company? How does that work?
So we always advise people to advise their insurance company they've had them installed. I've not heard of anyone that's had a policy cancelled or premium increased because they've had panels installed. So it's always best to tell them, and they can't, if anything, God forbid, does happen, they can't say, you didn't tell us.
Yeah.
And could we just clarify the name of the company you use and those microinverters, the name of those again?
Yes, so it's Enphase, ENPHASE, Enphase microinverters. How long have those guys been around, Richard?
They're actually born out of Silicon Valley. They come from San Francisco. And they started in about 2010, I think. They didn't bring a product to market until about 2014. They're
a long-established, American-designed product. So you can definitely Google them.
Yeah.
We would encourage it.
And if you're very particularly bored, there's I think the video is still on our website, which will show you the excellent shading performance that they offer from literally a telegraph pole with some cables going across. Or if anyone wants a link, just let us know and we can send you that out. Because one thing that does always surprises me is just how much shade actually impacts the PV performance.
Right. And going on that point, shade, it's sort of shade. What about cleaning of the solar panels? Presumably, well, I presume it's if they're dirty, it's effectively shade on them.
Yeah, so most panels come with a clean, don't they? Self-cleaning glass or a coating.
Yes, I mean they are essentially self-cleaning in as much as rain will sort of wash most debris off them and what have you, and dust build-up can potentially be minimal. I always say to people, sort of have a look at your roof now, because you've just got, you know, concrete tiles up there or clay tiles that aren't exactly frictionless, right? So if you can look at your roof and be like, oh, okay, there's not actually a lot of muck on the roof there, you can be confident that when you put a PV panel up there, the possibility of muck adhering to that is even less. So in 99% of cases, you don't really have to clean them so much, but
the shallower the angle. So if you've got a 5-degree roof, you will get that debris build up along the aluminium extrusion.
Yeah.
If you've got a 30-degree, 25-degree pitch, you won't get it. The water just washes out and takes that debris with it.
Yeah, but if you were wanting to be particular about it, then, you know, perhaps every 3rd year at the beginning of the spring, you know, give them a good squeegee. But, you know, seriously, that's probably about as much as one would need to do. So generally, no is the answer.
Cool. Sounds good. Well, we'll let you crack on with the next section. That'd be good. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to talk about installation styles. So now Luke has got the
It's got the power.
he's got the slide running. Let me just consult.
I'm going to have to do it in an odd way.
Okay, we're going to try and do it in an odd way, but let's see if we can get this working. So let's have a look initially at slide 7, for example, is a good starting point, Luke.
It's going to be only do it for the application.
Just bear with us while we try and get this definitely working, because this is quite
That
important.
decided to come up.
No.
You're stuck at just the application.
Yes.
Ah, we're seeing the gallery there for a moment.
Yeah.
Open the picture. No.
Open the picture.
That's it. Yeah.
What slide did you want, mate?
Number 7. It'll be after 6 and before 8.
And this is the reason we install solar panels and don't offer technical support to IT professionals. 1 second.
Stop sharing. Stop sharing. Is it?
We've got it. Right.
Sorry, everybody, and thanks for your patience.
Number 8.
Is that up there?
Ah, right, okay, yeah. Let's go with this one to begin with. Right, we haven't. So, as I was saying earlier about different methods of deployment, what you're looking at here, Luke, if you could zoom in, we could try and do that. Hopefully that will be a bit clearer because it's a little far away right now. That's a flat roof there that we did down on the south coast. So this gentleman's property, very high building. I believe this was 3 stories. Luke was actually there and installed this one. A small parapet wall around the edge. All of that is completely disguised up on his roof. And the total final deployment, I think, was about 20 modules. So we picked a module there that's a nice high efficiency. You can see that it has a white back sheet, yeah, for maximum sort of photons into the cell. And what you cannot see happening underneath that is that the framing is actually just weighted down to the roof. So this is quite important because we work by a methodology called the Euro code, which determines how many kilograms of ballast we have to put under these modules here. So there's an actual, rhyme and reason behind the way that we weight these things down. In accordance to the wind zones, in accordance to the height of the building, this sort of thing. But that just goes to show that if you've got a flat roof space, things can be done in that manner. Are you going to try and do another one for me, Luke, there, please? I'll take anything between 4 and 11, please, Carol. Oh, right, okay. Now, this is a very nice product from a manufacturer called Bissol. It's actually a rustic red module, which is coloured to match a sort of brown tile style there. So that's a customer's home in East Sussex. That's an Oast house that you can just make out on the side, but that's available too. So again, for people that have any sort of quibble around visuals, I mean, obviously it's still visible, but it's it's of a style that's made as conscientiously as possible for its surroundings. Can we try another one, Luke? What's up next?
This one. That's on the status of the.
Oh yes, okay, right. So that's an LG panel that you can see there. As you can tell, viewers, from the lack of front-facing silvering, as I explained earlier, and that's on a trapezoidal sheet roof. So that was probably a light commercial installation. Thanks, Luke. Have we got some rather attractive ones?
Yeah.
Okay, right, let's spend a little bit of time on this one, please.
Yeah.
When this comes up.
On this one.
Yeah, please do. Okay, this is what I really love to do. So this was for a customer in Esher, and the lady and gentleman there were re-roofing the property and engaged us at just the right moment, really, because you may notice that the modules there are set into the roof. So we've picked out an all-black module set down inside the tile. So there's no tile behind where those panels are sitting. It's flush down in line. And when done at the same time as a re-roof, as this one was, that is effectively cost neutral when compared to a traditional over-roof system using rail. So when you're driving around and you see most traditional long-standing PV systems, they're a bit above the roof. It's possible to achieve that finish at essentially very similar cost. It's very remarkably close if you're doing your re-roof at the same time and you speak to us at the right time. But again, what I was saying earlier about a genuine enhancement to the home, that's definitely going to be very impressive when they're a relatively young couple, when they do come to maybe sell that property one day, they'll be able to stand in the back garden and you know, very proudly say, this is what we did, and then be able to show them after 10 or 15 or 20 years of operation, they'll still be able to dip into their pocket, grab their phone, and show the prospective buyer all the money that was saved over that period of time. That's actually 32 modules there, so yeah, we're very happy with that one.
So just while Lee loads up the next one and Rob catches his breath,
yeah,
one of the common misconceptions that a lot of people are still working to is the 16 panel 4 kilowatt system. We can install that and we can tell the DNO, the electricity board, the people that look after the power cables afterwards. One of the things that we specialise in is doing bigger systems, so like the 32 panels that Rob says. Now we have to ask permission of UK Power first. So it can be a little bit of a drawn-out process. We have got a good working relationship with UK Power, our local DNO, people who look after the cables. But that process can take, on a good week, 3 weeks. On a poor day, they can take 2 to 3 months. They're legally obligated to give us a response within 3 months. But it's a little different, but it enables you to maximise your roof space, which is what it's about. It's about the customer getting the most benefit.
And it looks very nice.
Yeah.
I mean, super nice.
Go, Luke.
Yeah, most of those are turned around in about sort of 5 weeks at the moment, actually, yeah. oversized jobs. That is an all-black panel installation on slate. That's one we did recently. Again, that's a coastal location. If you look very closely, maybe even Luke could zoom in, you can actually see the flashing kit under there. Do you think you could zoom in on the flashing kit?
I'll have to redo it.
God, don't turn us off again like earlier. But no, I mean, perhaps you can see that on the feed there, but there are very particular flashing plates there, just on that top row underneath the rail. They replace slates. Again, it's unfortunate that not every installer goes to this level of
detail.
Yeah, well, perfection, I would like, but no, it's very important on roofs like that that it's done right, because obviously slate roofs are very expensive, very precious things. You don't want to be kind of messing that up. And when we approach them, we 100% make sure we're doing it correctly. So that just to give you an example of that. And do we have anything else here, Luke?
Another roof there on the
yeah, that's very nice. That looks like an LG panel to me, I think.
It is.
And that was actually an east-west split. So what you have on the other side of the property is exactly replicated to what you see there. 8 panels both sides. The point being, it gives a nice sort of shallow peak production spread out across the whole day, allowing the client to take maximum benefit from it. This is another misconception of the market, actually. Oh, my roof doesn't face south. Do not let that put you off, because it really, really doesn't matter. In fact, if you want to be strict about it, it's probably best if your roof faces sort of west-southwest, because you want to catch that evening sun. Because that's when power in the UK is most valuable, and also it's when you'll find you're using most of it. So pretty much any roof space or any zone, as long as it's not in the northern compass facing where production starts to tail off quite quickly, as long as it's anywhere between the east and the west around the southern sky, and not a lot of shading, it's definitely usable for PV. To just labour the point a little bit more, if you take a south-facing panel on a 30-degree pitch as your index of 100 for output, if you twist a module through 90 degrees and have it face west, for example, it will still be 83% as productive over the course of a year. So you're not really giving up a great deal. So it's absolutely worthwhile. I think, actually, let me just have a look at my flimsy piece of paper here. in roof. Oh, did we show the ground mount? Can we show the ground mount, Luke?
Yeah, number 6.
This will be the last one. I also mentioned putting things in patches of available ground if you have them. So we should have an image come up here any minute, showing a system we did again down here in the southeast. Is it coming? Does it come up?
Yep.
There it is. Right. Okay. This is a single row ground mount system. Actually, Rich can talk about this because you did this one, didn't you, Richard? So
yeah, this was for a farm over near Sevenoaks. We thought it was going to be a relatively straightforward installation, and then the customer said, "Oh, my barn's Grade 2 listed." So it was in the curtilage of a listed building. We obviously had to get planning, and just to further complicate it, it was actually on the boundary of 2 borough councils. So we had to go to planning for both councils. But this is Romshed Farm. This is a farm down near Sevenoaks. They're very much into their organic farming methods, and part of this was to improve the sustainability of the farm, because now they do run entirely off of the electricity produced by the solar panels, and at the same time they had a biomass boiler installed as well. So really actually bringing it down to local, and actually do coppice their own wood as well. So it wasn't chip brought in or anything like that. It was actual local produced wood. So yeah.
and that is a nice time to field another couple of questions, I think. Will.
Sounds good. So someone just wanted to clarify. You said that you'd need to approach the DNO, the local energy supplier, if it was above 4 kilowatt hour. Is that right? Is it
4 kilowatts peak? Yeah, 4 kilowatts.
Got you. And that's normally around 16 panels, but obviously depends.
Nowadays, actually, it's probably 12 or 14 can get you there. Yeah.
And what are the heat losses for the in-roof versus the external on top of the roof?
Heat losses or heat implications?
Yeah, sorry.
The GSE system that we use is vented. So, because you still use a clamping system to lay it down with, and there's still access to air underneath the modules. In fact, Luke, do you have some comments about this? Because you obviously install this stuff every day.
With regards to
the airflow underneath the GSE.
It has its own channels underneath. Do you want me to
come up here a bit? Yeah, just explain.
So with the GSE itself, where the panels sit, has its own air channels underneath. So it acts as both guttering for the rain, so as rain comes down the back, but also it gives the same breathability underneath the panel. And actually underneath the module itself, underneath the actual sort of what we call the GSE pod, there's a big hole, and essentially what that does is it creates a well, it's just the breathability. So you've got exactly really what you'd want with an on-roof system, and it's exactly the same with the in-roof. You're going to get the same sort of cooling factors that you need.
Picture.
So yeah, as you can see from there, we've got that big hole, and you've also got your gutters running down either side. So you do have a few mil with the panels just slightly on these sort of standing up bits, just down the bottom there with the mouses and things, and then obviously that big hole in the middle where you've got all your sort of breathability. So yeah.
On that point, it's perfectly reasonable to think, and we're not going to try and lie about anything at all. It's perfectly reasonable that it might get a bit warmer on the in-roof, than it would under a fully normal deployed panel. Okay, that's perfectly acceptable. Will it be catastrophically different? Not necessarily for the reasons Luke's just explained. But if you want to see the effect it will have on any module, then it's worth going and having a look at the temperature coefficients as explained on any module's data sheet, because it will tell you the impact on efficiency that will have as you start to move up the degrees in temperature, because as things warm up, they will become inherently less efficient. So you can glean some idea of how your panel is going to perform in these environments or on that mounting style from its data sheet, from the actual particulars written by the manufacturer. But we can also look at past installs for you as well, because in real world conditions, these things generally, if they're having any impact at all, it is extremely marginal impact. And we could certainly be pulling up data That's an example of a data sheet there showing temperature coefficients, that's a bit far away from me with my
0.28 on the volts for percentage per degree.
Yeah. So we could take you through that mathematically. That's a little bit of an exercise, but you could work out the effect it would have. But probably the best thing to do would be to pull up two systems in a generally similar locale, one that's in roof and one that's over roof with a equivalent panel, and you could see for yourself what that would be doing. And I'm sure we could dig through our data and find that out. So I would say to the person that asked the question, that's your answer, but we could explore it even more for you to satisfy you.
Cool. We've got lots of questions about solar tiles. Obviously, Tesla have, in the States, been teasing for quite a while and installing the odd one or two. Are there any examples of similar products in the UK that you've installed? What do you think the timeline is for Tesla tiles? Any more information on tiles?
Okay, fine. Yes, I can answer that. First of all, yes, we have undertaken installations with a tile style, and I think that Richard is trying to put it up for us now. But we did quite a sizable system. How many kilowatts was it, Richard?
It was 16 kilowatts in the end. We're just loading the images now. We've actually got some actually installation stage. So as you can see there, the bottom two courses are natural slate. I think it was Italian natural slate, and the next two tiles up are actually the solar slates. And I've actually got one to hand. As if by magic.
And
So
does each solar tile, is that effectively like a well, you can show us here. There's clearly three of them.
Yeah.
Attached.
So it's actually the actual cells that Rob showed you earlier are actually underneath. Could I have a wet tissue, please, Bob? The actual grey is actually painted on. That's actually done. It costs about 2% output just to put that over the top so it blends in. Just throw, Bob. It's perfect.
Slap.
So if
I waterproofed.
I don't know whether you can see that on the camera. But if I just rub that off.
Oh yeah, I can start seeing the line.
Quite right.
Yeah.
So that's literally, it's just the colouring to make it blend in. Keep cycling through the photos, Lee. So these are a British company, they're Welsh, GB Sol. Very good product. Looks fantastic. You know, it looks second to none. This is the finished article. You can literally see around the dormers the actual traditional slate, and then the rest of the roof is the solar tiles. Tesla tiles, yep, they're coming. And I think the only real thing we can say is they're coming on Tesla time. They're out in the States, they're working well, but it is going to be Tesla time. I think looking at the design, it's going to be a long time before they come over here because they really are designed for the American market and the American construction methods. Would you agree?
Yeah, there's quite a bit of testing has to happen at the BRE, which is a test bed centre for UK construction. They've got to get through all of that. Also has to be MCS approved. Yeah, there's going to be a bit to do. It'll be great when it comes along. But you know what we talked about just the other day? Probably something like, would you strip a roof off to put it up there? Well, some people might, yes, but probably it will be the go-to product when it's time to build something afresh or to refurbish.
Yeah,
right.
Need a new roof.
And everyone, you know, there's very few people out there right now thinking about doing that in the next, you know, probably for 10 years or whatever. So it will be a well-established product as and when the time comes to do that.
Got you. And what was the brand of that tile, the solar tile?
This one?
Yeah, that's from GB Sol.
GB Sol, yeah.
And they call them solar slate plates.
Got you.
It's
And there was a
GB
question here whether you tried any other brands. Someone was asking about Ergo Sun solar roof tiles.
Seen them, but not installed them.
Yeah. There used to be the Solar Century C21. Yeah. I think they stopped making it. There's been a few things out there. If someone has a product and they'd like our opinion on it, then get them to share it with us, and we'll tell you what we think.
Cool. And what are your thoughts on the tiles versus panels themselves?
So I can summarize this quite nicely. 3 times the price, half the efficiency. but they look amazing.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that probably answers most. And then we've got one here. When the roof is not south facing, what do you suggest? Split the panels on each side, or put more on one side than the other?
Now, it comes down to your profile to a certain extent. Literally every house will be a little bit different. Well, really, it's the homeowner's way of living in the home. It might be a little bit different. So it might vary for you depending on your personal circumstances. But generally, pick a west over an east for the reasons I described. You can go away and Google the duck curve, right, which is like the power curve for the UK. More power gets used between 4:30 and 7:30 p.m. than it does in the morning, right? Your house will probably behave like that most. So therefore, get west facing evening sun rather than east facing morning sun. Yeah, and yeah, there might be a case for accentuating one side over the other. Yeah, generally, but oftentimes what one finds is that if you've got an east-west split roof and it's just a classic rectangle on both sides, when you actually start to pull the figures apart, you just end up, many customers do, fill both sides, maximise the complete space. And again, like, we work through the figures with people, but very often times it's like, well, if you're up there, if you've bothered to put the scaffold up, if you're bothering to put some equipment on both sides, you will probably find it's most cost effective and advantageous for you to fill both anyway. That's quite common too. So I would say again, just give us a call. We can look online and give you some candid advice in short order, really.
Perfect. And then final question on solar, and I've experienced this personally as well. Solar skirts to protect pigeons, vermin, etc. from going underneath. I had an awful time with about 20 pigeons nesting under mine, so I know full well how much a pain it can be.
That's not funny.
No, squirrels are worse. Believe it or not, squirrels are actually louder than pigeons. Yes, solar skirt. So I believe one of the guys has just posted on there. Yeah, we've just done them for Dave. They do look very, very good. Work probably equally as well as the traditional fence systems. So the bird guard, traditionally, that stops the vermin, the pigeons getting in. But the solar skirt does look particularly good, doesn't it?
It's a nice thing.
It's much the same functionality. I think it's a little bit more expensive. Is it?
It was surprisingly cost effective.
Good.
Yeah.
And there's a nod of approval over from Luke as well. I think he likes that product.
Oh yeah. Which probably says more about the meshing, the bird guard meshing being too dear than it does about the skirts being particularly cheap, right? So yeah. But nice finish. And also, if you have any concerns at all around pigeons, birds, squirrels, anything like that, get that done when the PV install is going in. Can't stress that enough. Okay?
Agreed.
Yeah. But on the other hand, in my experience, our experience over many years, we think it's about probably 5% of customers that get a real nuisance with it. 19 times out of 20, you'll be like, everything's fine. No one's congregating around there, nothing's getting nested in. But for the 5% of people that it happens to who have issues with it, then best avoid.
The thing that I found was actually, in hindsight, I went round and saw other pigeons on other solar roofs nearby. So that's probably a good idea. If there's other houses nearby, go and have a look just to see if there's pigeons on their roofs. Because if there are, they'll probably migrate in a year's time.
We just had a chat, but while we were up on this roof installing his system, he had Luke cement a fake kestrel to the top of the roof, right? And is it working?
It worked fantastic, man.
It's working great. Until they get wise to the fact that it's like a fake.
It doesn't move.
And then we'll be back there putting an albatross up there or something for it. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I think that's all the questions so far. Oh no, we've got one more. How is the data signal recovered from the microinverters? Is it a Wi-Fi, Bluetooth?
No, it's power line communication. So literally, it uses a power line to talk between microinverters and the M-phase gateway. We haven't bored you with that tonight, but it's another little kit we installed that then talks to the cloud and uploads the information. The power line from the inverters to the Envoy, and then from the Envoy we can do Wi-Fi, or
GSM.
WPS, or we can do GSM, or just a straight network cable into the back of the router, depending on where it's all located.
Perfect.
Great. Right. Next topic, Richard.
My turn. So in those graphs earlier, before the gentleman's house we showed you, before the Powerwall installation, he had lots of power. The system's generating absolutely fantastically, but he's exporting a lot to the grid. Now with the SEG, you currently can get about 5.25 pence on a standard tariff with Octopus. You've got to send 3 units back to get 1 credit in your account effectively, because it's about 15p the UK average now for electricity. So unfortunately, it's just not cost effective to export it. So you really need to use it. And over the years, we've seen various devices. We've seen the Immersun, we've seen the iBoost, we've seen power diverters, Solic immersion heaters, and they basically all heat your hot water, whether that be a traditional hot water cylinder or whether it be a thermal store, but they basically heat your hot water, and a typical domestic hot water cylinder will take about 10 kilowatt hours. We saw from the systems earlier that there you can run up to sort of 25 kilowatt hours, and you've got an excess of about 17, so they still work. What we've discovered now with the invention and the utilisation of batteries, electric vehicle charge points, and still wanting to heat your hot water via this free electricity, there is really only one go-to product. And for heating your hot water, Zappy please, is the Eddy. It's a My Energia product. It ties in beautifully with the Zappy via talking to the hub. Zappy is just about to appear on the screen. This heats your hot water. It will heat any resistive load. So if you wanted to put some sort of heater on it, you could, though it's not recommended. Twin outputs, so you can do a immersion heater at the top of the cylinder. So you've always got a little bit of hot water at the top, and then a second cylinder immersion heater at the bottom that will then heat the whole tank. That then pairs in.
You've got a Zappy here, have you, Richard?
We have. No, it's not come up yet. We're just about to show you the Zappy
Where
on screen.
did we put it?
It's out in the warehouse.
Ah. Oh.
Luke's going to work at getting that up for us. So, Eddy and Zappy. Zappy charges your electric vehicle or your hybrid vehicle. The Eddy will heat the hot water. The big difference with the Zappy product, it brings everything under control, and that includes the Powerwall. If we fit the correct number of sensors, the correct number of CT clamps, the Eddy, Zappy, and the hub will actually control whether the power goes to the battery, from the battery, or actually have no influence on the battery. Now that's obviously really important, because what you don't want to do is plug your car in and drain the Powerwall. What you don't want to do is plug your car in, charge the battery, and have no hot water. So by you setting the settings on those 2 devices, and then you adjusting whether the car charges first or the hot water heats first via the app, you actually have true full control over your system. If you go for third party or different products, the iBoost will heat your water perfectly well. What it will do is fight with the battery controls. So you will see some days you'll have a full tank of hot water and an empty Powerwall. Other days you'll get halfway through the day, your Powerwall will be filling up fantastically. The clouds will come out, the power will drop, and then when power picks back up, the iBoost will take control, and then the Powerwall will empty. Other days you'll have a full Powerwall and no hot water, and vice versa. So by using the products from My Energia, fitting the 3 CT clamps, fitting all the sensors so the Zappy can see all of it's there. Is it going to appear? We've got a great picture to show you. It's not loading, unfortunately. And by the way, I did see the message from someone about some IT support for a reduced price solar system. Right now, I would take that offer every day of the week.
There it is. So if you squint and use your most powerful spectacles, you'll be able to see.
In the very right-hand corner.
Ah.
Hang on. No, it's gone.
Right.
We think we got it. So anyway, from the app, you can decide what charges first. There's a setting on the Zappi itself that it's still not loaded. There's a setting on the Zappi itself where you can decide whether the Powerwall or any AC coupled battery will charge first, discharge first, or whether they will have no influence. And by having that setting, it's actually really important because you don't want to come home to have one and not the other. So yeah, they're the products we recommend. Again, unfortunately, not the cheapest, but positives. It's a British product made up by My Energia up in Lincolnshire. They got a fantastic team up there, and there's some really good support. And he's still trying.
And again, they're worth a Google. So
yeah,
it's My Energy, MYENERGI. My Energy.
Hang on.
Oh,
Yeah!
That's the hub. Okay.
So that's the app.
Oh, look.
I'll quickly talk you through the app. Hang on, there's a roof calling. So on there, you can clearly see on the bottom right hand corner, you've got the solar panels generating the power, and there's an arrow coming into the middle. In the bottom, you can see the batteries. So the Bioenergia, the Zappi has got it's got eyeballs. It knows what's going on with the battery. The left-hand side, that would be where the eddy would be. Moving up, you can then see the car. You've then got the house load, which is running at about 1 kilowatt, and then you've got what's being pulled from the grid. Now, this is done via the cloud over Wi-Fi to your phone. This is a phone app. So it takes a snapshot. And although it updates about every half a second, every second, it takes a snapshot of what's happening. So that's why you can see a little bit of input coming from the grid. Because at that particular time, the PV power's dropped, there's a little bit of load gone in the house, and at this point, the battery hasn't had a chance to adjust. That's why you're seeing that. So, well done, Luke. That's great. Thank you.
If you go back, maybe we can see the Zappi, or we're asking too much there.
No. I'm on a roll now.
This would be the car charger coming up.
Yeah.
Which is a nice looking piece of equipment too.
There we go.
Yeah. That's the untethered version. Obviously, this is all irrelevant to Tesla owners who already have car chargers.
Yeah.
But okay.
Great product. You know, the Tesla, the current generation of Tesla charger, not particularly smart, not covered by OLED. Actually does communication through the car. So any updates or anything come through the comms on the car to the actual charger itself. So I don't recommend using the Tesla charger with any other cars. Yes, it does work, but any updates or any comms or anything actually don't happen because they come through the car. So looks like there's some questions just being asked. I'm very conscious of time. We've got a couple of bits to get through.
Yeah, just two sections left and we're done. So doing well, I think.
Question. Yes, one question. Do you need both the Zappi and the Eddy? Can you get away with just the one? How does that work?
Yeah, you can have either product. Each product is completely standalone. So you can have the Eddy for the hot water. If you haven't got a hot water cylinder because you're running a combi system, you can just have the Zappi for the car. So yeah, one or the other, or both.
Yeah, so we do have an owner here saying he's got 2 electric cars but no charger, so it's still of interest. So that's good. I think most people understand how those both work, so that's pretty good. Yeah, we can move on. Right,
so we're now on to the real meat and potatoes, which is the Tesla Powerwall, right? So obviously you're all Tesla owners, so you're probably quite bought into to what's coming out of Tesla and out of the mind of Elon Musk. And we've been an accredited install partner for the Powerwall for nearly 2 years now. And the more we've worked with it, the more we have just come to realise that it is absolutely the go-to product of choice. What's going on inside that battery is so head and shoulders above the competition that I find myself most often telling people, if you're going to get a PV system and you're considering a battery, frankly, if you don't want to get the Tesla, then don't get the battery. Just hold off until you can get the Tesla, because it's doing some fantastic things and the feedback we get on it is great. and yeah, and for other reasons that I'll dive into. So first of all, a little bit about what it's doing that's so special. Well, first of all, you get a lot of battery for the space and size and money, in fact. So it has 13.5 kilowatt hours of storage inside it. Lo and behold, it's almost like that was pre-designed for the UK market specifically, because if you cycle that battery once per day, so even if you had a battery with no PV whatsoever, you could put it inside of your home, you could charge it up overnight at like a penny a unit, you know, or something like that, very, very cheap rate. And then that battery would sustain you for the entirety of the following day. So it's possible to work the system that way. And 13.5 kilowatt hours is almost exactly, actually slightly bigger than the UK daily average consumption for a typical dwelling. So that's pretty cool in the first instance. Secondly, you guys are tracking the background, you put me off my flow. Right, yes. When these batteries were put into the cars, Tesla heat and cool certain cells within that battery in the vehicle to optimize it for efficiency and lifespan. It's what's known as cell thermal reconditioning. That's going on in the Powerwall as well. It's the same learning that happens through the fleets of vehicles that are out there in the world has been transferred across the Powerwall. So it watches how you use your power, it watches how the PV operates, it keeps an eye on what the weather's doing, and it brings all of these things together to prepare itself for how you're about to use it. And most of the time, it's over 90% accurate. So its preconditioning is really, really spot on. This means that it's very, very likely indeed that it will be living and working optimally far beyond its 10-year warranty period. And I can't really say that about any other battery on the market with nearly the same amount of confidence. The other thing is, if you're just looking to couple this system, couple your battery with PV only, so just use it as a PV sink for excess power to give it you back in the evening, it's quite typical for the paybacks to not be as quite exciting as the PV side. The PV side normally pays for itself in sort of 8-9 years, typically. The battery element, when just running in tandem with the PV, you're probably looking at more like 13, 14, something like that. So it would be a bit unfortunate for someone to be buying a battery only to discover that it's dying in year 11, year 12, it's starting to choke a bit before it's quite paid for itself, you know. And that may happen with the mid-tier and lower battery ranges that are kind of out there, but I cannot really say that about the Tesla. So from its longevity, from its size, its styling as well, because you're now looking at one on the screen, they are extremely attractive pieces of equipment. And that's not any kind of plastic case on the front there either. It's like a metallic case. It's a proper, seriously nice, nicely made piece of equipment. So you've got the sizing, the lifespan. You can island the house. Well, it does island the house because when it's installed with its associated gateway, and that sits between the grid and all of your home's consumption. So in the event of a power cut, it will kick in and keep the home running. Other battery systems can do this, but none of them do it as seamlessly and easily and as nicely as the Tesla system, in our opinion. And the other thing is, help me here, Richard. What else might I have missed now?
So just on that backup functionality, there was a bit of discussion just this week on the owners group on the Facebook page. I was unfortunate enough to experience a couple of power cuts on Friday night, and it wasn't a seamless changeover. Now, obviously, although the backup and the gateway is of UPS quality, it really does depend on the type of power cut. So if you walk up and flip your main isolator switch and it's a clean cut where the volts drop, it loses everything, the Powerwall will switch over like that. Unfortunately, I think what there was a tree brushing against the power line and taking a short to earth. So it was a very, very dirty, a very uncontrolled shutdown of the system. So I experienced, like we all do when you have a power cut, the lights dim, the TV disappeared into a little box in the middle. And then a second or so later, the Powerwall pops back up. Now there was me walking around as you do, Mr. Smug, telling my son to turn his computer off because we had to save the batteries, we didn't know how long it was going to be off for. And I'm sitting there watching the telly again, we're all watching the telly now, My daughter comes back in, everyone's got their power back on. What? Everyone's got their power back on. And it had, the gateway had flipped back over seamlessly back onto grid. And it was only 10 minutes later when the tree touched the power lines again and the power went out that I realised the grid had come back on. So it really does depend on the type of power cut that you get. Rob's touched on the firmly managed stuff.
And when in power cut conditions, if it is daytime, it creates its own grid. So the PV will continue to operate and feed into the power wall even during those periods. I mean, power downtime in the UK is not a major issue really for most people. A few of us really experience it, but it is in there. It is part of the functionality, and so you know it's worth mentioning. So yeah, I've whipped through that quite quick, and you've seen the product, but probably best maybe to field some questions about the battery, because I'm sure some of you may have it. Oh, incidentally, I think Luke may be able to bring up the back end of the app as well, because the app also is very good, and when used in tandem with the end phase application, there it is. That's what you'll see from your phone. Yeah, when used in tandem with the end phase application, there is absolutely nothing you don't know about how your PV and battery and home is performing with all of these technologies combined onto it. So you can see there the power wall at the bottom, circled in green on the right hand side. When you're actually looking at it from your phone, these little dots will flow between the different areas. You've got the grid at the top there. Oh, sorry, the grid solar at the top and the house at the right. And nothing is happening with the grid at that moment in time where we freeze frame that because everything is being managed between the PV and the power wall for all of the requirement in the home. And on the left-hand side there, obviously, you can see some graphing. So again, it's pretty self-explanatory what's going on. But the big yellow part is the PV output, and the blue area there, Richard, I believe, is the battery capacity.
Yeah, battery discharge.
So again, you'll have all of this, and it's there at the touch of a button. So, and again, no other battery manufacturers really have this back end either. So this is so nice and makes it easy. Further functionality is possible through it as well, because you can dip into the back end through your phone and tell it to auto charge at certain times of day. So as we're about to get onto, which is pretty much the final subject, which we'll go into in a moment, is agile and smart tariffs. So there's tariffs out there now that you may be aware of. We hear a lot in the market about Octopus Agile, for example, where cost of energy goes extremely low in the middle of the night. Sort of 2:30 AM, it will go to 2p or a penny per kilowatt hour, sometimes even negative. And so you can tell your Tesla, if you are not full up from the PV at this period of time, dip into the grid between 2:30 and 4:30 AM, say, and fill yourself up at extremely cheap rate. And then it will just carry it through into the next day. And all of that is completely accessible from your phone, and you can give it instructions to just continue that on into the future. So it's all there to be done very easily. Yeah, so questions, Will, sorry. If there are any.
So we have, what's the total energy capacity of the Powerwall, and how long roughly would you be able to be, say, off grid or away from the grid?
Go for it tonight, yeah.
So 13.5 kilowatt hours of usable capacity. And the second part to that question is how long is a bit of string? Because if you're running a few LED lights, you potentially can run for days. If, on the other hand, you've got your son, daughter on a PS3, PS4, widescreen TV running, the wife or yourself, obviously, could be cooking dinner on an electric hob or have the oven running, and you're using a lot of that power. If the Powerwall's running at full capacity at 5 kilowatts, you've got about 2 hours, 20 minutes. 2.5 hours worth of power if it's fully charged. One of the other functionalities of the Powerwall is obviously the storm watch that we haven't covered, which we'll cover in a minute as well. So
perfect. And does it limit the charging of the grid? How does that work?
Is there a limit, did you say? Sorry, well, you broke up slightly.
Yeah, yes. Is there a charging limit from the grid, from the DNO?
So that's covered on the either the G98, which is a 3.68 limit, charge and discharge, or you've got the G99 limit, which we was talking about earlier, where we do the bigger systems, where then the Powerwall can charge at full capacity, which is 5 kilowatts per hour. So again, yeah.
It will fill itself from nothing to full, either in 2.5 hours, if you've got G99, or it will take like 3 and a bit hours, maybe 3 hours, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, something on the 3.6 on the lower authorization. But easily doable within that sort of 2 a.m. to 4:30, 5 a.m. slot.
Got you. Someone was saying that it sounds all fantastic, maybe not financially possible for them yet. Is there a way to slowly grow the system? Buy certain parts and then upgrade in the future when time's available?
Yeah, completely. So under the old feed-in tariff scheme, it was a single shot affair. We did a PV install, you got your MCS certificate, and then you registered that. And when it goes through, it got registered with Ofgem. That was your feed-in tariff scheme. That was your fit. You couldn't expand that. If you expanded it and put it through the same generation meter, you invalidated your fit scheme and you lost it. Now there is none. There is no fit scheme. It's purely done on the remuneration is done on export. You can start as small as you want. You can start and to generate power, learn about the system, learn about how you use it, and then add to it as the time goes on. It is the beauty of the microinverter product. We can install 1, we can install 16, we can install 50. It doesn't matter. It can be added to at any time.
Yeah. When we come back to put more on, by using these, it's seamless. It picks up with the pre-existing system and just will appear on the, well, it's called the map. Yeah. So there's like a system map. And if you put 10 on today and 10 on next year, your next 10 will just appear on your map and everything will auto update. So, it's another reason we do it, because people have that flexibility.
Perfect. So another question, and it's similar to my question actually. I've got a 10-year-old 4 kilowatt hour system. I'd love to add a second 4 kilowatt peak array and a Powerwall. Will my DNO allow this on a single phase supply?
That depends on the DNO, the local infrastructure in the area. Typically, for something like that, we personally don't charge for doing that exploratory work. It's a form, you fill a form in, we fill a form in. It's a 20-minute, half-hour process. If we engage with a DNO, there's a very good chance through export limitation. So we've got G98, 3.68 kilowatt export. We've got G99, which theoretically is up to about 12 or 13 kilowatts of export on a single phase supply with optimal conditions. Or we have G100. Now both Enphase and Tesla are G100 compatible and compliant. And G100 is the export limitation side of the grid. So if they did come back to you and say, yeah, that's okay, Mr. Feely, we can install, you can install your 8 kilowatts of PV in your Powerwall, but you can only ever export 6 kilowatts of power. And that would be the limit. So we'd leave the existing 4 kilowatt system alone. We don't want to upset your feed-in tariff. We'd install the new system with export limitation as a software set. And again, with the Enphase product, there's no additional products we need to fit. There's no uplift in price for having to put the G100 limit in. It's all built in. It's a software. It's a ticker box exercise when Luke commissions a system. So it is possible, but the only way you'll find out is by engaging with the DNO.
In my experience, I have actually never seen personally an oversized system or a second tranche of panels adding to a system ever be fully denied by the network. Okay, I don't know if Richard has. Okay, we've never seen it. So it will be doable, and as a percentage requiring export limitation, I would say 2%, 1%.
It's very low.
Very, very low indeed. So you're jolly likely just to be able to expand your system, plug it in, and have it operate fully.
And that's I'll just caveat with, that's our experience of UK power. I have heard horror stories. I'm dealing with SSE at the moment, not particularly good. Western Power are getting better with some of their applications. And to be honest, sometimes it can be which network engineer you get. If you can get a phone call to them and explain what you're doing, because a lot of this technology is still quite new to them, if you can get a phone to and explain how it works, you generally don't have an issue with the system.
I think maybe we should crack on, get the Octopus tariffs done quickly.
Yeah.
One more round of questions, then we do.
Is that okay, Will? Because I'm very conscious.
Yep, sounds good. Yep, we're good. Thank you.
And we did literally say we could bore the pants off here. So
that's interesting.
So octopus tariffs. Obviously, a lot of forum members and a lot of group members are aware that Octopus are one of the most forward-thinking energy suppliers in the UK. They've got their standard tariffs. They have Go. They have Agile. And now, and this is the bit where I'm talking about, is they have the Tesla tariffs. And that Tesla tariff is open to people with vehicles, Tesla cars, which obviously all of you are, but also now people without. Now, if you with the Tesla tariff, you have the car, you're looking at 8p per kilowatt import, but also 8p per kilowatt export. Now, there's numerous advantages for this, but firstly, let's talk about it from the consumer's perspective. Obviously, you're relinquishing control of your very expensive battery system to Octopus. Yes, that's going to be daunting, but if they decide to charge your battery overnight and they put 5 kilowatt hours of electricity in it, it's going to cost you 55p. If they then choose to discharge your battery at that expensive time between 4 and 7 in the afternoon, this sort of time of year, and they discharge the 5 kilowatt hours of storage, it's earned you 55p. It's cost neutral. There will be times when they will also, the solar panels will charge the battery, and they'll export some of that power that you've generated once the house load is satisfied. It's great. It hasn't cost you anything. No matter how Octopus manage that battery, if they charge it or discharge it, it's zero cost to you. And that's really important because there are other tariffs out there, other companies out there doing similar things with virtual power plants that aren't zero cost to the consumer. And if anyone's on there on the Facebook groups or the forums, you very often see posts, I won't name them, where my battery's sitting full, I'm drawing from the grid, it's just sitting there, or my battery's discharging. And they're paying different rates of pay, different rates for the import and the export, because they have the company has control of the battery. With the Octopus tariffs, whether it be 8p per unit or 11p per unit, they can do what they want to the battery and it costs you nothing. Now that's fantastic. But more importantly, if we think about this from a solar perspective, this is one of the things that a lot of people who have been in the industry have been arguing for during the feed-in tariff scheme. With the Octopus Tesla tariffs, you're effectively got net metering. So what does that mean? We talked about earlier about your house usage being, let's say, for instance, 4,000 kilowatt hours per year. So Mr. PV installer can come along and can install a 5 kilowatt system in the south of the country that will generate 5,000 kilowatt hours of the year. So you're 1,000 kilowatt hours in credit. We've already talked about the fact if they charge or discharge at zero cost to you, you will export power during the summer and you'll build up a credit. In the winter, at this time of year, you'll be back importing power again. But over the course of the year, you're 1,000 units better off, or in financial terms, about £110 if you're on the 11p, for about £80 if you're on the 8p. But also, with the Tesla tariff, there's no standing charge. So that 25p, 30p to pay, depending on what tariff you're currently on, that's gone. And that's always been a bane of people with solar. They've never liked the standing charge because people with solar like to get down to zero bills. And now with the Tesla tariff, you genuinely can. And if you size the system correctly, not only can you eliminate someone's electricity bill, you can actually generate an income from it. Now, it's not going to be as great as the feed-in tariff income because it's net metering. You're going to cover all your usage first. But it can certainly offset the cost of the installation when you're talking people spending 5, 6, 7, £800 a year on electricity, and they're going to wipe that out and they're going to get an income from the right size system. So it's very, very interesting. The Go tariffs where people charge, as Rob said, charge the batteries overnight. Tesla's got the automation. It's built in. It's a time of use tariff on the app. As Rob said, it's getting close to 90% there. The problem it has is when you change your pattern, when you decide you're going to go out that night and you need your shirt, so it either needs tumble drying or it needs ironing. It's unpredictable human behaviour. That's what trips it up. Seasonal changes. Unfortunately, in this country, we can have 1 day of sun and then we can have 4 grey days. Where the software has been developed in California, they don't have the seasonal changes like we do. They get a lot of wall-to-wall sunshine. That's the problem. So I know Tesla are working on it. They're working on trying to improve it, but it also relies on humans, us, the owners, to try and keep our behaviours the same. Because if you haven't used a tumble dryer a week and then you put it on all day, the Powerwall's not going to be expecting it. The tariff, the algorithm is not going to be expecting it. Any questions on the tariffs? Because it's getting very close to my bedtime now. I've got 5 minutes left.
So the one question that's come in, it seems that having 2 Powerwalls on the Tesla tariff is a bit of a waste. Is that something you agree with, or how do you think?
So currently today, yes, it is. I'm not going to bet about a book, and I'm going to put my hand up. I've got 2. I feel slightly let down. But that doesn't mean to say this is not going to change, because it's Octopus's responsibility, it's Octopus's business plan to make this work. Now, if I can discharge double what Rob can, because Rob only has 1, why can't I be furtherly remunerated it? Because I've got double the capacity. So I suspect, I don't know this, but I would suspect later down the line, as the tariff evolves, I would expect to see different options and different things to come through that, which may have, there may be people who have multiple Powerwalls that would benefit from that, because I have a big PV system. Every time we leave a panel off the roof, it sort of ends up at my house. My wife's currently got 3 strapped to her back, so yeah, that's why I'm here at 9 o'clock on a Thursday evening. But anyway, any other questions?
No, all good from my side.
Right.
Okay, what the grand finale then? Because this has been very good, really, really enjoyable.
Luke, are you ready with your slide?
Are we talking the final?
Yeah, so
slide, right.
Will, going to put you on the spot now. Question for you. You've been around with the group for a long time, so I know you're quite embedded and know how Tesla work. Back in the day when you could refer people to Tesla, do you remember what the referral scheme was?
So you would refer someone and get various goodies. You could eventually get a Powerwall if I think you did 5. I think off the top of my head. You could get a home charger, a few other bits and pieces, and then that was pretty much it.
Okay. I must stress at this point, this is a JPS offer, okay? This isn't being funded or backed by Tesla. This is something that we want to do to the Tesla owners. This is currently an exclusive Tesla offer because we need, to the owners group, because we need to make sure that we can scale appropriately and maintain our existing customer service. So, if any of you Tesla owners refer us to your friends who go ahead and have either a PV system or a Tesla Powerwall fitted, and there's a few small terms and conditions. The PV system needs to be over £5,000. Obviously, a Powerwall is more than that. We will credit you with £100, okay, as a referral fee. If you're successful enough and you can get 10 referrals, so either 10 PV installs, 10 PV and Powerwall installs, we will actually reward you with a free Powerwall. And I say free, all we ask is you pay the £900 back that we've given you in referral fees as the installation fee.
Does that make sense, Will?
Sounds good.
Great.
Sounds very good.
That's available to begin for people right away. So we'll be sharing a link for our website where you can go in, log on, get your personal referral code, and begin with that immediately if you wish to. So it's there, up and running, and ready to go.
There'll be a link on the Facebook group. I think Josh will put it up very, very shortly. You can actually see it at the bottom now. It's exactly the same format as the Octopus referral codes. As Rob says, enter your details. You'll get an email back with a referral code. And then please share that with people that have been considering it. There's nothing stopping you. Nothing stopping you if you don't have solar. Referring somebody that doesn't have solar, you don't have to have it to be able to refer someone. The only other condition is there is no cash equivalent. Okay, so it's £100 per installation that you refer us for, and then for every 10 of those, you get a Powerwall.
You wouldn't want a cash equivalent. Who would want a cash equivalent? It's a Powerwall. Yeah. Even if you live in the middle flat in an apartment block of 30 flats, you'd still want the Powerwall, right? So I think it goes without saying.
But, yeah, I'm the managing director. I have to say, I have to put these caveats on it. Yeah, you can see the referral links up there now. So if there's any questions around that, please drop them in the message box, and we'll field them now. Yeah,
are there any last questions at all? Because there's been some good ones out of the viewers.
Yeah, I must admit, I think everything we've had in, and thank you to everyone for asking. Yeah, I'm just going through. No, I think we're all good.
Okay, great. I suppose it just remains to be said then that you can reach us here. You know, it's just been on the wall behind us all evening. JPS Renewable Energy.co.uk. If anyone there wants to reach out and ask us questions, we're very happy to speak to you about anything.
Yeah, very happy to talk. And thank you very much for joining us. And it generally is a real pleasure to talk to people that are interested. You know, and we would talk a long time about it because that's what we like to do. We are quite passionate about it. The guys that we use, you know, Luke and Rob, they come out and they do put their heart and soul into it. So, you know, it's thank you very much for your time, really.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you very much for your time. Yeah, enjoyable for everyone. And if you've been watching live, thank you very much for joining us. And look, this is obviously on YouTube and Facebook for those wanting to watch afterwards as well. Before we do quickly go, one quick reminder that for the rest of the year, we are raising funds for Mind, the mental health charity. So the links are in the description below. If you quit to chuck in the pot to say thanks for running these events, is much appreciated. Mental health also, please check out the list, justgiving.com/Tesla Owners UK if you want to do a donation. We've obviously got more information about JPS on our website as well, teslaowners.org.uk, alongside the other key partners that we have with us. So yeah, a big thanks to everybody